the topic this time is going to be not on Tuesday, but definitely on Wednesday. So, for you, on your Money Matters show, what do we have? We have a number of things to energize you, to give you the knowledge, and to support you in the process to be in control of your money on Betar Bangla, and it's all exclusive. So what you're getting today? Today, you'll be learning about fuel supplies. You'll be learning about gas companies. You'll be learning about electricity companies. How do you read them? How do you go about challenging companies when you find that you are right and they are wrong? So I will guide you in the process, but you'll not only be learning about gas companies, you will not be learning about electricity companies. You'll also be learning about one of the most important things for taxi drivers. If you're minicab drivers and you're listening, I want your calls. I want your calls on 0207 791 5170. Because topics for today, yes, it's about fuels, yes, it's about gas, yes, it's how to read, but it's also about penalty charge notices. If you're driving, you know what it's all about. If you're driving, you know your enemy is that traffic warden. You know that it's the council who's giving you fines after fines after fines, and your hard work money has to pay that fine. The question is, what is your right? Both in the context of gas, both in the context of electricity, and of course, both in the context of fines and penalty charge notices. So to help you and to guide you, of course, we have a guest speaker. As usual, we have Joe Goodman. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Ripon.
So Joe is going to be helping us to tell us how the fuel companies work, why are the fuel companies charging us so much, and how you can avoid being charged and being ripped off, because we don't want you to be ripped off. And I think there are ways that you can get a better deal, but of course, in order for you to get the better deal, you need to know what's right and what's wrong. So before we get into it, let me just ask Joe really where she's from, so we can then understand what she means and whether we should believe her. Go ahead, Joe.
So I'm the Financial Inclusion Manager at the Bromley by Bow Centre, which is in Bromley by Bow, as the name suggests. And I oversee a project called East End Energy Fit, which provides energy advice to local residents, both from Tower Hamlets and also from around London.
So, Joe, I mean, let's get back to nitty-gritty things. We know, right, since the 80s, fuel companies have been privatized. So this isn't about pro and cons about whether privatization is good or not, but the question is, as a result, we are seeing our fuel bills going up. In fact, according to Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Energy data, there has been a rise by 4.5% this year, last 2013 quarter. The question is, why?
So that's a very interesting question. The energy companies who've increased their bills have mostly said that this is because the wholesale costs of energy have gone up. So maybe because there have been reasons why it's more difficult to obtain gas or electricity. I don't have enough technical knowledge to know whether that's true, but one of the big arguments against that has been that the prices haven't gone down at the times that the prices have gone down, but it seems to be easier for people to put the prices up than down.
I mean, it looks like, Joe, you seem to have sparked of a controversy here, because we seem to have a caller, hopefully, waiting for you.
Exciting.
Hello there. Are you the caller?
জি আসসালামু আলাইকুম
ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম
আপনারা কি ট্যাক্সি ইন্স্যুরেন্স করেন নাকি
We don't do taxi insurance, but we can talk about today fuel bills, i.e. problem to do with your fuel companies or how to work out your fuels, or if you want to talk about penalty charge notices and court fines. Those are the topics for today. So caller, do you have any questions around those things?
No.
Okay then. Well, when you do, feel free to call us again, caller.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
That's okay. Take care. So obviously, a wrong number and a wrong issue, but I'm sure we can deal with it, Joe. So Joe, tell us, how do you work out your bills when it comes to fuel?
Okay, so one of the important things when it comes to bills, and one of the problems we see coming up a lot, is when people, maybe they haven't given meter readings. It doesn't matter so much if you have a prepayment meter with a card or a key, but if you're paying after you've used the energy, if you don't give the meter reading, then they will just guess how much energy you've used. And sometimes that's quite good because they think you've used more, and when you give a meter reading, you realize they owe you money. But other times it can mean that you end up needing to pay a lot more than you thought because they've estimated too low.
I mean, obviously, do you know what? I come across individuals who are paying so much and they've had enough. I've had enough, and I'm sure you've had enough when your bills are going up. But the question is, how can I understand how to work out my bill? What is kilowatt, for example?
So kilowatt hours, it's a way that energy is measured, and it's to do with the amount of power that's needed and how long it's needed for. So if you wanted to be really geeky with your energy bills,
Please tell us.
You could actually look at your appliances at home. So things like your kettle, your toaster, it will have a power rating on it, and that will tell you how many watts it uses when it's switched on. So a kettle, for example, actually uses a lot of watts when it's switched on. So there's some complicated maths you can do where you multiply maybe how many watts are on the power rating and how long it's switched on for, and then you come up with kilowatt hours. And that's what your electricity bill is built in. I have to say that I don't think most people, when they look at their bill, are kind of calculating the kilowatt hours and checking it. And I have to confess, I also don't check the kilowatt hours.
Nor do I.
But it's good to know how it works. And actually, although electricity is measured in kilowatt hours, they will also convert your gas bill into kilowatt hours. So it's the same measurement, even though it's not what's actually on your meter. There's a calculation the energy company does.
So, I mean, from your experience, you know a lot of people do get in trouble. What are the main causes of getting into trouble apart from debt? But, you know, how can you be in control of your troubleness to avoid any risk in the future?
Yeah. So I think, as I said, regular meter readings is one of the best ones because it can really throw you off if you think that you don't owe anything and then you find that you owe a lot. I think it's also really important to do a regular review of your energy bills. So a lot of people, maybe they pay quarterly and they only think about the bill when that bill comes. But it's always good to have a look at your bill and just check how much are you being charged, what's the balance, and actually you can see one of the really useful things you can see on your energy bill is what your tariff is. So the tariff is the name of the price plan. So it's what your energy company is going to be charging you. So even though all of our energy comes from the same place, so the national grid provides our energy, and it doesn't make a difference if you pay British Gas, you pay E.ON, you pay Npower, you pay one of the smaller providers. The energy is coming from the same place. So the most important thing to do is see what your tariff is. And if it says standard, then that is a big alarm bell because it's likely that you're going to pay more than if you were on a
Why
special
is that?
tariff. So I think people often like to think that their loyalty is rewarded. So you think, actually, I've been with this company for a long time. They should be giving me the best price because I've been with them, so long. But actually what happens is normally they only give you a deal for 1 year or maybe 18 months, maybe 2 years. And at the end of that time, they will contact you to say your fixed price is coming to an end. But if you don't contact them, they will automatically put you onto the standard tariff, which is always more expensive.
So, so what is the secret to getting a best deal then?
So there are lots of ways of getting a good deal. You can contact your energy company and say, am I on the best deal that you offer for my usage? So your current energy company, they will already have all of the information about how much energy you use. But it's also a really good idea to look not just at your current energy company, but at all the energy companies. So there are lots of websites online. One that a lot of people have heard of is USwitch. And on there you can put in your details. You can either tell it how much you pay per week, per month, per year on the website, or you can give your energy usage, which is the most accurate way. So if you've been giving meter readings, somewhere on your bill, you should find a number of kilowatt hours, your favourite thing, Ripon.
Absolutely, kilowatt hours.
And if you use that for the comparison, it will be the most accurate. And it will then give you lots of different options. So starting with the cheapest, going through to the most expensive.
So you talked about usage. So how do we find usage?
So the website is U, the letter U, and Switch, SWITCH.com. I think it's .com. And you will just, when you go on the website, you will just need to select energy, because you can also use the website to compare things like phone bills, internet providers. So, but energy bills are one of the really, really popular things that the site is used for.
Okay, Joe, obviously you're giving us a wealth of knowledge, but let's take a break and let's listen to what the members of the public think about fuel.
I'm not too sure, because I know that my mum actually deals with the gas and electric, but I know that at the moment we pay by, we have a meter for our gas, so I think that's more manageable for us, rather than getting a bill every 3 months, I think it was, so yeah.
Yes, I do. I think there's plenty to it. It's a case of having to look around see if you can find a cheaper deal, not better, not a better rate. Okay.
I'm not too sure, because I know that my mum actually deals with the gas and electric, but I know that at the moment we pay by, we have a meter for our gas, so I think that's more manageable for us, rather than getting a bill every 3 months, I think it was, so yeah.
Yes, I do. I think there's plenty to it. It's a case of having to look around see if you can find a cheaper deal, not better, not a better rate. Okay. And like you can do that either again on the website, or you can call your supply to find out whether they can do a better deal. Do it that way. Find actually when you try to claim benefits, energy discounts, anything like that as well. Especially if you're claiming benefits, especially the illness benefits, which is PIP, DLA, or appointment support allowance. And that's my bit. Thank you.
Joe, so you heard about voice of members of the public, but it seems to be they're much more clever than we are. Definitely. So, but okay, let's look at the first member. She relies on her parents, and the household is on prepayment meter. What does that suggest to you?
So prepayment, we see a lot of people who find prepayment excessive, and she was to a quarterly bill. And quarterly bills, I think, are very difficult to manage. But now actually you can get more regular billing, you can get different options for payment. So generally the cheapest way to pay is direct debit. You normally get some discounts for paying by direct debit. Not everyone is comfortable with direct debit, and it's understandable, because obviously if the money isn't in your account, then you might get bank charges when they try to take the money. So we see a lot of people who have requested from their energy company. Not all of them do this, but they give you a little payment card, and you can actually go to a pay point, to a post office, and pay every week £10, £20, whatever you need for that. And it goes towards the quarterly bill. So in some ways it gives some of the convenience of prepayment, that you can spread the cost every week, but it also means that you're not having to, you know, pay the higher rate. But it is worth, a lot of people are quite reluctant about direct debit, and if you know it's not going to work for you, then that's fine. But it's still worth having a look at the deals for direct debit, because sometimes people, when they see just how much you can save, they think it's maybe not my favourite thing, but I would consider it. for that reduction.
Well, exactly. In the end, this show is all about money, your money, and that's what matters. So, if you look at the national stats, actually, it shows that so that you actually get a better deal when you're with smaller companies. I mean, in UK, there are 69 active suppliers in total. And out of 69, I mean, we're talking about the cheapest tariff could be around 688 per year. And the most expensive, we're talking about just over £1,500. So if you look around and fish around, you could actually save more than £350 per year. So think about it, 350. When you've got that, what will you do? I'd probably go away on holiday to Italy or something. Definitely.
It is an amazing amount of money, and we speak to a lot of people who say it's too much work, it's too much hassle to switch provider.
Yeah.
But when you actually see the amount of money you can save
Definitely.
and think what you can do with that money, it's unbelievable.
I mean, we've already talked about two things, really. We've already talked about switching suppliers. Obviously, that's a great way to say. We're talking about 350. The other thing we talked about is direct debit. I know everyone can't do it, but the moment you do it, again, more savings, which means more money in your pocket. So, since we're talking about more money, and Joe, you heard that the second speaker said something about getting benefits. Is there any form of support you get if you're on benefit when it comes to fuel supplies?
Yes, there are a few things. The biggest one is the warm home discount, and that's something that is available to. It's a little bit confusing in that you have to be with an energy company who offers it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a government scheme, but it's only the large energy suppliers who offer it. Although actually some of the small suppliers now are becoming quite big, some of the ones you hadn't heard of, so it's still worth checking if you're thinking of switching to them. All of them have to offer that discount to people who receive the guarantee element of pension credit, which is a majority of people receiving pension credit.
Mm-hmm.
They should receive that automatically, but the companies can also have what's called a broader group, and they can choose a little bit what they want in the broader group, but it's often to do with a low income, maybe also with some kind of disability or health condition, maybe children under 5. And if you are eligible for the warm home discount, it's £140 of credit that you receive every year that comes off your electricity bill.
350 direct debit plus 145. Things are just adding up, all in your pocket. So, okay, speaking of, slightly moving the topic a bit. Now, we know about meters. How many types of meters are there?
So there are a few different types of meter. There will be, depending on how old your meter is, it will be quite different. So you might have one of the meters where the numbers just move round and it's quite an old-fashioned kind of meter. If you've got a really, really old-fashioned kind of meter, you might even have the one with the different circles turning round into each other. They're very old. But now quite a lot of them are digital displays, so you can read those. But the newest type of meter, the kind of new kid on the block, which in theory all of us will have by 2020.
Sounds funky, but is it though?
Is smart meters.
Ah.
So we're used to having to send our meter readings to the energy company, and then they tell us what our bill is. If you get a smart meter, it does that itself. So it will just send in real time the data about your energy usage. And that could be anything from what time of day you're using the most energy to when you're away and you're not using anything, but it means that your bills will be absolutely accurate.
Okay, look, I've got a couple of obviously tweets and case studies for you. Joe, I know you're rushing home to learn Hindi. Now, okay, here's Salim. Salim is on prepayment meter due to falling into into fuel arrears. His gas supplier said that his only option is a prepayment meter. He feels he's paying too much. Why is he paying too much?
So if you're going on to prepayment meter, it is likely that you will be paying more than you need to. You can try to negotiate with your energy company if they're suggesting that you go on to prepayment meter, but you don't want to. If you have some debts, normally if you can make an arrangement with them to make, even if it's a small contribution that you can afford, if they know that you're paying for your current usage and a little bit extra towards the arrears, then normally they will be happy to not do the prepayment meter. I will also do a small plug for the East End Energy Fit project.
She's selling her project. Go ahead.
By Bo. So if you do find yourself falling into arrears with your energy bills or your water bills, we have trained advisors who are Bengali speakers, unlike me.
Fantastic.
And they can help you look at your arrears. So they will look at your budget, find you a payment plan that will work, talk to your energy company on your behalf and negotiate that.
Tell me more. Come on, Joe.
And even actually, if you've been in a very difficult situation and that has caused you to get into the debt, sometimes they can also apply for grants. It's not easy to get the grants, but sometimes we can clear those debts so you don't even have to pay them back.
So what are the details?
So if you are interested in getting an appointment with the East End Energy Fit team, you can give us a call on 0208 709 9745 or email us on eastendenergyfit@bbbc.org.uk.
Listeners, if you have any questions, if you have any queries, 0207 791 5170. And we've got a couple of tweets. One from Sharina. All the major fuel suppliers get away with murder. You must change to get the best deals. There is a saying, smaller the better. It is not size that matters. I've got another tweet from Ripon. Gas and electricity are essential services. They ought to be public owned. What are your thoughts, Joe?
Interesting.
Oh,
God. So
political or what?
Yeah, we'll try to stay away from the politics.
Yes.
I think the small suppliers are really interesting because they have started to revolutionise the market, and I think they have introduced more competition because the theory is that a private market is more competitive. But if you only have a few companies and they're all charging the same, there's not much competition. So we've started to see some suppliers coming in with things like refer a friend discounts, bonuses, free gifts, or actually just having the regular tariff much cheaper. We've also seen some starting to do things like, instead of fixing your bill for 12 months, they do a variable deal, but it can go up or down, but often it's at the lower end of the market. So for some people, maybe if they forget to switch, that suits them quite well. So I think some people are quite nervous about the new suppliers. They're worried that maybe their customer service won't be very good. So I would say do have a look online and see if you can find reviews. Lots of websites, things like Trustpilot, you can find reviews of the energy companies, because it might be that if they're small, it takes them a little while to get all of their processes working as well as they could. But then sometimes big companies' processes don't work as well as they could. So I would say it's worth kind of looking at both the smaller and larger suppliers.
Well, Joe, I mean, obviously you have been fantastic, but just before we go, we got a couple more case studies and then you can go to Hindi. So, yeah, we got Nathan, and he has been with his same gas and electricity supplier since he ever remembers. He has no clue how can he do it. Well, how can he change his supplier? How can he do it?
Yeah, it's actually a lot easier than people think it is.
Yeah.
The first thing to do is get a most recent copy of your bill, or if you're on prepayment, get your most recent statement and have a look and see if you can find your annual usage. So somewhere on your bill, it will say how much gas and how much electricity you use every year. And it will say either estimated or actual. If it says estimated, I would recommend that you contact your current company, give a meter reading and get the actual usage, because otherwise you're going to be guessing and you might not, because there's no such thing as the cheapest energy company. There'll be some that are cheaper if you use less electricity, some that are cheaper if you use more, depending on how they calculate their bill. So once you have the actual figure, then you can go onto USwitch and put your details in. It will then give you a list of suppliers You can look at the cheapest, and it will also give you places where you can click through for more information. So the things to look out for is sometimes the default option is direct debit and managing it online instead of with paper bills. So do make sure that you've checked the tariff and maybe even call the company to see whether they can offer you what you need. And once you have said that you want to switch, the new company actually do everything. The only thing you will have to do is provide a meter reading on the day that you switch to your old company and your new company, who will then use that to work out who you owe what.
Joe, fantastic. Thank you for taking part on Betar Bangla, and thank you for taking part on Your Money Matters.
Thank you very much for having me.
Perfect. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to take a break, and we will come back to you in a few minutes to talk more about ways for you to save money, and we'll specifically be covering best breakdown cover, and then, of course, another horrendous topic that all the taxi drivers in London ought to be thinking, and that is penalty charge notices and, of course, fines when you get in the post. Okay, so let's take a break. Thank you. That was lovely, but it's great.
I wonder if you'll get calls.
Oh, well, I don't really mind. For me, it's all about preparing all my things I have to say. So that's it. That's what it is.
Yeah, I should have prepared more what I was going to say.
But you're
I just hope it's in theory, this is the stuff I know. So
Oops.
it's fun. Fun bit of radio.
Oh, thanks.
I'll go to my class and tell my teacher that I've just been on my voice.
Okay. Sure. Let's have a look.
Enjoy the rest of the show.
Fantastic.
Take care.
Take care.
যোগাযোগ করুন 0208-364-7392 ওয়েবসাইট motorplane.co.uk Motorplane is the thing. আচ্ছা, এত কার্গো সার্ভিস থাকতে আপনি কেন জেএমজিকেই বেছে নিলেন? কারণ জেএমজি কার্গো সার্ভিসে পাইনিয়র, সিলেটের প্রথম কার্গো সার্ভিস যারা বিমানে অ্যাপ্রুভড এবং মালামাল থাকে 100% ইন্স্যুরেন্স। তাই না? শুধু কি তাই, জেএমজি সপ্তাহে 5টি ফ্লাইটের মাধ্যমে দেশে মালামাল পাঠায়। কাজে দ্রুত এবং উন্নত সেবার গ্যারান্টি থাকে পুরোপুরি। আর কিছু ওয়ার্ল্ড ওয়াইড কার্গো সার্ভিস, নিজস্ব প্যাকিং ব্যবস্থা, সপ্তাহে 7 দিন খোলা। বিশ্বস্ততা আর দক্ষতার জন্য জেএমজি খ্যাতি দিন দিন বেড়েই চলেছে। জেএমজি কার্গো, কথায় নয় কাজে বিশ্বাসী। 8 ফোর্ডাম স্ট্রিট, লন্ডন E1, টেলিফোন 020-724-7770।
বাড়ি বেড়াতে যাবেন?
মিষ্টি ছাড়া ভাবাই যায় না।
বাঙালি মাত্রই মিষ্টির ভক্ত।
গায়ে হলুদ, বিয়ে, বৌভাত, জন্মদিন অথবা যে কোনো দাওয়াতে অনেক রকম মিষ্টি চাই। তাজমহল সুইট সেন্টার
আপনাদের যে কোনো অনুষ্ঠানে সুস্বাদু মিষ্টি ও কেকের জন্য আজই চলে আসুন
তাজমহল সুইট সেন্টারে। আপনাদের সন্তুষ্টি আমাদের কাম্য। তাজমহল সুইট সেন্টার,
200A রিপন রোড, পার্কিং IG11 7PR,
ফোন 0208-507-0200
অথবা লগ ইন করুন www.tajmahalsweets.co.uk.
At Hodge, Jones and Allen, we use the power of the law to help hundreds of people each year to stand up for their rights. We do things differently to help people fight injustice, and we win cases every day. We'll give you honest, clear, straightforward legal advice. We're upfront too about any cost, dependent on your case. You may be eligible for a no-win, no-fee arrangement. Call 0207-874-8200 for free initial advice, or visit our website at www.hja.net. We'll help you and your family stay strong and fight for what's right.
পিসিও ক্লেম, মিনি ক্যাব ড্রাইভারের বিপদর বন্ধু। গাড়ি অ্যাক্সিডেন্ট করিয়া জবলেস হওয়ার দিন শেষ। জাস্ট ওয়ান ফোন কলে পিসিও ক্লেমস আপনারা দিতে পারে 24 hours recovery, immediate replacement card, storage and repair service. 020-7791-7799. আপনি শুনছেন বেতার বাংলা প্রবাসী বাঙালি একমাত্র মাধ্যম।
Welcome to Your Money Matters show again. Again, this time we are still dealing with Ripon Ray on your money. You've heard about how to save money, how to challenge creditors, and how to watch out when your fuel bills are high. And we had Joe Goodman from Bromley Bible Advice talking about just that. But of course, we are also interested in what you think, members of the public think. So I went out on the street and interviewed a few more people to find out whether they know what fuel bills are all about and whether they know how to get a good deal.
Quite reluctant to use different websites which advise you on which is the best deal. It's very complicated, and I'm sure there's been complaints in the past that some of these websites direct you to where they're giving the most money, but I could be wrong there. It's very complicated. Lots of different tariffs, things go up and down. What they give you with one hand, they take away with another. And I really do not feel that the vast majority of consumers, especially the ones who are vulnerable, in the sense they have low income, are able to navigate these different sites.
And it is go on the ones that are look at the ratings, and then you'll know which ones are the best ones. When you're looking for the best deals, you can have many. Like I have many windows open at a time, so we're just marking down what the tariff is, what the price is, what standard or variable. I usually have the 18 months, 12 months, and see how much you're paying for, because there's always standing charge. So see how much you're paying compared, see how much you're paying now to what other companies are offering, and always look at the ratings as well. But don't always go for the main ones, as they say. Check what's new, what's in your area, and what's suitable to your circumstances.
There we are. We've heard what our members of the public think about ways to get a cheap deal. Of course, we have a broad range of views. Some are skeptical of going online, where we've seen with the first speaker, and of course then we had the second speaker talking about being careful, reading the reviews. Obviously, this is a clever one. So obviously, if you really can do that, go ahead, go online, check them out and see if you can get the best deal. But of course, we're not only talking about best deals when it comes to fuel, we're also talking about penalty charge notices and court fines. Minicab drivers out there, if you are listening, you know this is the topic for you. So call in 0207 791 5170. Is about penalty charge. So yeah, the question is, do we know the difference between penalty charge notices, or do we think they're all the same? So the question, though we know, the answer isn't as simple as that, but of course, we'll be getting to that in a bit. Before, let's talk a bit more about best breakdown covers for your car. So yes, I'm giving you all the offers basically. Before we talk about penalty charge notices, court fines, I want to talk about the best breakdown cover. So here are the tricks, or here are the best bits. First, if your car is new, yes, that is, if your car is new, you certainly get a free breakdown cover from the car maker. Actual service be provided by a third party, so in other words, AA company or any other, but let me reassure you, when you buy a new car, it's very likely that you have a breakdown cover. So don't go and get an insurance which also includes breakdown cover. That's the first tip. New cars usually comes with breakdown cover, for example. The other one is, there is a saying, if you 35% of breakdown usually happens at home. So if you are going to be getting an insurance for a home cover, should you be doing it? The answer to that is yes, because 35% of breakdowns happen at home, and if you do not call out, it could cost you £100. So basically, if you want to save money and you want to get breakdown cover, make sure it covers your home too. So it's much better because, as you know, more people seem to get a breakdown cover whereby the cover is within a mile, but don't realize that a lot of the problems seem to happen just near where you live, basically. So that's the second tip. That's basically the information is coming from which it's the major publisher of health and consumer protection magazine in the UK, and the resource that I'm referring to, all of them, comes from which. And the third saving tip for you is loyalty, I'm afraid, does not pay. So now we talked about fuel companies before. The rule is exactly the same, even with cars. I myself had a car insurance, and I remember when I've insured my car with a company, I don't want to name or shame anyone here. At first, they charged me £1,000 because I was a first-time driver. But the following year, when I tried to renew it, guess what? They charged me £1,500. And when I asked them why, they said, oh, the premiums have gone up. Oh, really? So when I went online, did a bit of comparethemarket.com, guess what? I got it for $750. So in other words, just because you're comfortable with the existing and you're thinking you're loyal, it doesn't mean you are getting the best deal. So go and compare the market. So for example, you definitely save, but if you want to stay because you think the perks are great, go ahead, go and haggle. Say, look, I have checked with other companies and I've checked yours. Can you compete? If not, I'll be taking my business elsewhere. So, drivers, taxi drivers, minicab drivers, if you're listening, don't be afraid to say, I am going to switch. So, now, going back to penalty charge notices and fines. 0207 791 5170. Taxi drivers, have you been hit by a penalty charge? Have you been forced to pay a fine? Have you thought about challenging? Well, I'm going to be talking to you about just that. So, according to national data, 4 out of 10 appeals to hundreds of councils across in the 5 years has been cancelled. So, in other words, if you are thinking of appealing, don't be shy. Do it. Because it's very likely, at least 4 out of 10 anyway, are going to win their appeal. So don't be ashamed, don't be afraid, and definitely don't feel guilty. And another one, I would say, 4.3 million people succeeded in the appeals, and the information I found out under Freedom of Information Act, because governments have data. If you analyze the data, you know you are right. So in other words, 4.3 million succeeded, and I think you can succeed too. 0207 791 5170, because I want to hear your stories. I want to hear how you dealt with it. I want to know whether, if you think it's worth appealing, although data and information that I have shows the other. So how do you know which way to go when you have a penalty charge notice? Okay, now let me introduce you to in terms of penalty charge notice. Now there are two types of notices. First, of course, issued by a traffic warden. That's usually employed by the police, and the wardens gives you a notice. You call that fixed penalty notices for serious violation. That's a bit like, I suppose, if you're on a red light or on a red route parking, where you shouldn't be parking, or in other priority areas that ought to be safeguarded. But of course, you know that. And the other one is you're probably familiar with, it's parking attendants. Now, they are usually employed by the council. So if you receive a penalty charge notice by the council, then you know it's done by a parking attendant. But there is another one, which is a private companies. I mean, although there's a limit to what private companies can do, but in terms of towing and taking your car, they can't usually do that unless we're talking about police and ambulance areas and hospital areas where it's really reserved for public good, if you want to say. But if it's like in let's say an area where residents are living and it's a private owned by a landlord, like a housing association, then they shouldn't really tow your car away. They might give you a notice, but that's a notice and not a notice from the wardens, or not a penalty charge notices. So the question is now for you and for me is, what can you do? Now, of course, first thing is first, you have to read it, no doubt. Find out whether you think if there is right or wrong. If you feel there is a genuine miscarriage of justice in your case, feel free to appeal. If there is a doubt which says, hang on a sec, I am right here, then do appeals. As you know, 4 out of 10 appeals have been successful in the last 5 years. 4 out of 10. You could be one of them, basically. And of course, don't forget the data. 4.3 million people succeeded in the appeal. So 4.3 million, it is not a small figure, is it? So 0207 791 5170. Yes, if there is injustice, go and appeal. But what is the appeal process? So that's what I'm going to be talking about briefly. So let's say, for example, for penalty charge notice, what you'll be getting is a notice saying you have 28 days to pay or contest the ticket. And of course, if you pay within 14 days, your penalty charge notice will be halved. So in other words, let's say, for example, if it's 120, and then if you pay within 14 days, you pay only £60. And I'm sure what I'm saying is ringing a bell to you guys who are listening to this show, Money Matters show. And if you want to call in, 0207 791 5170. Of course, the time is increased to 21 days if the violation was caught on camera and the ticket is issued by post. So do bear in mind, 14 days, or if it's caught on camera and if the violation is also caught on camera and issued by post, it becomes 21 days. But the question is, what is the appeal process, isn't it? Obviously, if you think there is something wrong and you think they have made a mistake, we're all humans in the end. So is the traffic warden and the parking attendants. They're all humans. They want to grab cash from you. They want your money. They want to basically sponge the hell out of you to make sure that you have nothing in your pocket, especially when you're driving. So the question is, what can you do? Okay, 0207 791 5170. That's the number you call to have a chat with me. If not, you have an appeal. The appeal process for penalty charge notice is as follows. Write to the council, explain why the parking ticket was wrong. So you really need to think about why you are appealing. What's your reason for their ticket is wrong, so you need to appeal. And of course, it's an informal appeal. So what you're doing in the end is to basically, instead of saying, let's go all the way to court, you're saying, oh, look, let's deal with it informally. You're wrong anyway. Here's my proof to you being wrong. And so can you please sort it out by making it right and discharge what you've accused me of? So best thing would be is for you to provide evidence of receipts, i.e. if you bought your ticket, to say, look, my ticket time covers the period that I was in. Here's evidence. Or if you've got any photos to challenge what they are stating, or even if you've got a witness. Of course, witness is someone who may have listened or was there with you and can say exactly what you're saying without putting words into his or her mouth. The person has to be honest and frank, and of course, you should always think from the point of view that what the judge will think. So the person has to be sincere. So that's kind of what you ought to be doing, really, in terms of informal process. And of course, don't forget, if you submit your informal appeal within 14 days, so the period is frozen. So if you lose your informal appeal process, you have to pay half the cost instead of the full amount. So do bear that in mind. And of course, if they say the opposite, do challenge them again, either by making a complaint or taking straight to the tribunal. That's that. So, and of course, if you are not successful informally for your PCNs, you can always try formally. And this is when, of course, you have to think about formal representation with the council. And again, you do exactly the same thing. Explain why the council has got it wrong. You have to explain with your story and providing receipts, photos, and witness statements to show that you are right and they are wrong. And you can also request for CCTV camera record at that place at a specific time to argue your case. So again, this is what you do. And of course, if the council does not respond, here's an exception, an interesting one actually. If the council does not respond within 46 days of them receiving your appeal letter, it must cancel the penal charge notice and your claim around your claim fee as well. So if they don't respond, you can also argue that that means they ought to cancel it, because the law says within 56 days they have to respond. If not, the presumption is the penalty charge is not valid. Okay, so that's that. So that, of course, if you are not successful with your formal appeal, what can you do? Okay, and you can send, then you'll be receiving a notice to owner. That's pretty much you, the driver, whose name is under the license name, or DVLA's record shows that you are the person who owns the property. In that case, you will receive a notice to owner that you must pay the original charge. And of course, if you don't, you can then appeal to an independent judge. And that independent judge is basically a lawyer. A lawyer, maybe a solicitor, very experienced solicitor, or an experienced barrister, who is going to be talking to you about your case, where you'll have yourself on one side and the representative of the council on the other. So then, of course, the adjudicator will listen to your story and their story, and then come with a judgment or a verdict. And if it goes on your favor, then of course you have won your case. And if it goes against you, then of course I'm afraid you have to pay. And if you want to appeal, you can appeal, because of course things do go wrong. But then the question is where. This is when you'll be definitely needing a lawyer. But of course, if you live in London, it is an independent adjudicator we are talking about in terms of dealing with the case. And if it's in other parts of England, then it could be traffic penalty tribunal. If it's in Wales or in England, it's traffic penalty tribunal. That's what you have to think about. But of course, in terms of dates, there are 28 days from when you receive your notice to owner to pay or not to pay. If you don't pay, then of course the case goes to a bailiff. We know what happens when it goes to bailiff. The bailiff will try to recover their money either by seizing your car, your goods, your assets. But also what you'll be getting is a county court judgment against you. So that means that there'll be a declaration made by courts that you definitely owe the money. So yeah, and if any creditors want to see your record, they will see that you've got a county court judgment, because that's one of those things that you will have on your credit reference agencies, credit reference report. So do bear in mind, credit reference agencies will have a record which says that there is a judgment against you, because reference agencies have a number of records, including county court judgments. So now, let's say you have received nothing from the company which alleges that you owe money. Then what? And you've never heard of anything ever in your life, and suddenly, out of the blue, you receive a notice from bailiff saying, hang on a sec, you haven't paid your penalty charge notice. Now, we've gone through court, you have done nothing. Here's a bailiff saying, where is the money? Then in this case, what do you do? There are a couple of things you could do, but one most important thing is making an application to court to set aside the order. Don't forget, notice to owner is basically saying notice to owner through the courts to recover the money. And since there is a county court judgment registered, you need to set that county court judgment aside. You do that by N244. Then the case will go back to court. You can then argue your case as though there was no judgment at all, as though there was no hearing at all, and you can have a fresh hearing in front of a judge against penalty charge notice. That's kind of dealing with penalty charge notice. But of course, let's deal with fixed penalty charge. That's another one, isn't it? Fixed penalty notice. Now, the difference between penalty charge notice and fixed penalty is that fixed penalty is issued, as I said, representative of the police, and it's heard in magistrate court. So it's a criminal justice issue rather than a civil matter. So in this case, it's more like whether you've been found guilty or not. And then, of course, if you're found guilty, a number of things may happen. First, you might have to go on a training, and I'm sure many of you are driving now may have come across this, where you have to go for a training to show that you have changed completely and you become a good driver, or you want to develop your driving. So therefore, you go on a training course to show you are rehabilitating, and both. You have to pay your court fines. So there we are. So that's kind of how it is. But if you're disputing it, you can always write to the court's fines officer and say, I want a hearing, and a hearing if you've missed all the deadlines. Or you should, once you've received your notice, you can always read it and find out the due process for challenging it. But of course, it's not just simply a due process that we are interested in. We are also talking about for you to avoid your parking tickets and paying those things. So the question is, how can you do that? This is how you do it. You can stop on yellow lines. So another word, when you're driving, you can generally stop on yellow lines, but don't leave your car unattended. So if you leave your car unattended by a yellow line, then of course they can give you a ticket. But if you're dropping someone on and off the road, or if you're picking someone up, it is fine. So if you are by the yellow line, but if you are stopping and left unattended, then of course they can give you a notice, a charge. But if you are picking someone up or collecting and you don't leave it too long, you are fine. And of course, in terms of getting caught, you can get in court by being on the camera. So there's no way out, really. So just be careful. It's not just simply whether someone is watching. It's more like someone and something. That something is the CCTV camera. So minicab drivers, you know, and I know, your enemy is not just simply the police, not just simply the traffic warden, is also the camera. So yeah, the other thing you need to avoid is you can't drop someone off at a bus stop. So in other words, avoid going on a bus stop and dropping them. Again, if the camera catches, you might be in trouble. Now, of course, there are more easy stuff such as check parking signs, pay and display signs. You won't believe many of us have missed those signs simply because our lives are so busy. We have to pick up customers from the roads because Uber says so. So obviously the best thing to do is just check the parking signs and see whether it says pay and display and for what time. Sometimes you might find that sat-navs aren't bad. They can help you too. Sat-navs are good at telling you where you can get free space to park legally. So keep an eye. So that will be another one. And of course, don't forget the times and days of the week when you can park the car. If not, you can definitely be fined. And most important of all, when it comes to psychology, if you're not sure about anything, best to avoid taking the risk and best to avoid parking there or taking that road. So there we are. So what would happen if you find yourself in a setting where your cars are being removed? If your car is removed and towed away, then of course you have the right to appeal against the decision exactly the same way as you would do with penalty charge notice. So of course, I am coming near to an end, and I've got a couple of tweets. It seems, tweet I've got from Shanta. The whole thing is a rip-off. They're making money from poor people. I hate it. Thank you, Shanta. Thank you very much. And of course, I've got another one from Nathan. Pay it, otherwise it is a nightmare. I don't want bailiffs coming to my home. Go, please pay. Okay, we heard about pay. We heard about penalty charge notices. We also heard about fine, and also we've heard about fuel supplies and gas. Ladies and gentlemen, I really hope you enjoyed this show where you learned about many things to improve your lives and to avoid that mess. So watch this space. Sooner or later, you'll be getting more of me, usually every Tuesdays, 5 to 6, on Your Money Matters with Ripon Ray. But of course, during Ramadan, you're getting me on Wednesdays between 5 and 6. On that note, I would say you take care, and of course, see you soon.
Quick cover insurance, minicab insurance এক নতুন নাম, yearly, monthly, quarterly. minicab insurance এর জন্য আজই যোগাযোগ করুন। Quick cover insurance, telephone 0203 747 6640 with www.quickcover.org. Address 4 Second Street, London E1 OBB. Quick cover insurance, minicab insurance এক নতুন নাম। PCO claim, minicab ড্রাইভারের বিপদের বন্ধু, গাড়ি অ্যাক্সিডেন্ট করিয়া জবলেস হওয়ার দিন শেষ। Just one phone call, PCO claims আপনারা দিতে পারে 24 hours recovery, immediate replacement card, storage and repair service. 020-7791-7799.
ট্রাভেলসের জগতে সকলের পরিচিত ও অত্যন্ত জনপ্রিয় একটি নাম হিলসাইড ট্রাভেলস। চায়না, আফ্রিকা, আমেরিকা কিংবা মিডল ইস্ট সহ বিশ্বের যে কোনো দেশের এয়ার টিকেটই এখানে সুলভ মূল্যে পাওয়া যায়। বাংলাদেশ বিমানের সর্বোচ্চ